Alright, so for this homework we asked you to set up a 3-node replica set, and at a high level basically what you need to do is start 3 normal MongoDs, but you have to give it the repliset command line option, giving it the name of the replica set. You give it the data path just like you would a normal MongoD, except each MongoD in this replica set needs a different DB path, and it needs to be on a different port because we're running these all on localhost. So once you have these 3 nodes up, you actually have to make sure they're all connected and all configured properly. So down here, we give you instructions on how to set up the configuration for this set. This is our example configuration. We have our host name and our port, and we have IDs for the members, and then the ID for the replica set name. So you could also do rs.initiate with no arguments to automatically create an empty configuration, and then just do rs.add to add the other members, but in this case we set up our configuration all up front and call rs.initiate with rconfig. So at this point you could type rs.status to see the state of our replica set, and right at the end run validate.js just like you did in all the other homework assignments that had validation scripts. You may have to install the dependencies, but this will confirm that it works, so I'll show you how to do that. Alright, so let's step through setting up this 3-node replica set. Alright, so this is a script that I wrote to set up the 3 nodes. This is the first phase of setting up our replica set. First we're removing the data directories, so you need to be careful here, but I know these are all basically empty. Here I make the new directories, and here I'm just starting the 3 MongoDs. So I give it the replica set name, different log files, and different data paths, different ports, small files to not use too much disk space, and fork to basically run this in the background. So this command will run start a MongoD, then continue on to the next line, start a MongoD, then continue on to the next line, start a MongoD, rather than starting a MongoD and running it in the foreground. So this is the script to set up 3 nodes. So first let's make sure we don't accidentally have any nodes running on the system. So I'm going to kill all MongoD. So it looks like I didn't have any running, so I can do bash setup.sh. So this is actually a good example of one of the issues you would run into setting up a replica set. So I think this is good to talk through what's happening here. So you see we have makedir datas rs1 permission denied, and what that basically means is we don't have permission to create those directories. So there are 2 ways we can deal with this. One is we can change the permissions on /data, and the other is we can just pick a new DB path, which is what I'll do in this case, just so I don't have to change permissions on files on my system. But if you wanted to change the permissions on this, you would use the chmod command, and you actually have to have root permissions to use this to change certain directory permissions. But for now, let's just edit our script, and instead of running in /data/rs1, let's do ./data, just so we're running locally in our home directory. We don't have to worry about permission issues. Alright, so now we have all our data paths locally. We have permission to edit these files and make directories here and do whatever we want, so this shouldn't be an issue. Alright, so now we run our setup script, and we see that all of these are forked. So let's actually tail this log, see if we started successfully. And we see that it started, and it's waiting for connections, but it hasn't yet been configured. We see this empty config issue right here. So now we have our 3 nodes running. Let's try to configure them. So for that, I have a script that I'm going to run through the Mongo shell. So let's take a look. So all this is doing is creating a JSON object for our config with our replica set name and our members, hosts, and ports. This is just what was in the assignment, and we're just going to run this as a script in the Mongo shell and see what happens. So if we do mongo configure.js, so the shell just ran our configure script. So now let's actually try to connect to our replica set and see how it looks. So we see we're connected to a secondary. So if we do rs.status, we can actually see the status of all our nodes. We see this one is in secondary, this one is still starting up in startup 2 phase. This one is in state unknown, so it looks like it's waiting for a primary to do initial sync, so that's kind of interesting. So let's just run this a few times. We see that this is the primary, which is a good sign. And we see these other 2 nodes are secondaries, so we have our replica set fully set up. So now that everything's set up, how do you prove that it's working? So I'm just going to run the validation script real quick to show how that works, and then show you the code. So Here we have package.json, validate.js. So we do npm install the dependencies for our validation script. Alright, so now we can do node validate.js. And we see that we validated successfully. We have a 3-node replica set up, has the correct output of rs.status, and the local.system.repl-set collection has all the nodes that we were looking for. And here you see the code to enter in the assignment. Alright, so that's the answer to homework 6.5 on how to set up a 3-node replica set.